Hello everyone, it is Marjoram of Sage and Marjoram, and I'm back with another project video. So today we're going to be looking at my Twill Gamp derivative project. So this is part of the School of Sweet Georgia Weaving Twills on 4 Shaft study group, and I decided to move ahead pretty quickly with my project after the Twill Gamp. And I chose this project specifically because I wanted to be able to try a few functional pieces. I also wanted to try some of the twill patterns in cotton instead of in wool. So this is a long video as well. I apologize, or you're welcome, depending on how you feel about long crafting videos. But this was probably 2.5 days worth of filming condensed down to 30 minutes. So that is why everything is really sped up or chopped out, because there is just so much weaving. So what I'm doing here is just tying onto the back bar. I decided to tie on this time instead of lashing on, just because I was still in shock after my tension issues. I'd never had them before in like 35 weaving projects until the Twill Gamp. I was like, of course this is the one that gets me. So I decided, just to be safe, I'll tie on the way that I'm used to. And this is what I always did before I lashed on. I would tie on in these loose knots at the back, and then you'll see when I go through and I get ready to wind onto the back, I really do tighten everything up. I just like to tie on loose so that I can get as much extra length out of my warp as possible, because it really does, these knots really tighten down once I go up to the front of the rattle and tighten before winding on. And I'm trying to tie on in small sections. You'll see the same at the front. I also decided not to lash on at the front. I just tied on, and I tied on in really small sections. It actually goes back to a pretty old magazine article, old weaving magazine article about tying on in smaller sections rather than lashing on, depending on the project and what you plan on doing. And I decided to do that because I planned on hem stitching. I hem stitch in small sections, and I also didn't want to use too much waste yarn, so I'd have more space. It's a different type of space saving, I think. Like, you can save space by lashing on, or you can save space by tying on in small sections and not needing nearly as much waste yarn to spread the warp. So I guess there are trade-offs in both. Anyways, so I'm just finishing tying this on. You can see I'm using a lavender cotton. This is an 8/4 unmercerized cotton. And the other half of the towel is also 8/4 unmercerized, and they are in the shades Coffee, a natural Undyed, and then also a forest green. Now, originally I was going to do these only in the lavender and the coffee shade, but after doing kind of that purple berry color, the natural cream, and the forest green in my 2 Twill Gamps, I decided I wanted to incorporate those as well. So it might be a little busy. I feel like when I look at the finished project up close, it's pretty busy. But from a distance, like a normal distance, if I was using these tea towels, I think that it really enhances the patterns. Okay, so you can see there, like I mentioned earlier, those knots really tighten up, and I make sure that I get them all tightened up before I will go through and start winding on. I am once again using my super duper long wooden sticks at the back. I think I'll show you in a second. But first I had to unhook. I accidentally had one of my Lee sticks hooked into my back bar using my Helping Hands by Ashford. Yeah, so this was a fun project to do. I also should mention I slayed this at 15 inch per inch and a 10 inch per inch. reed, which is why I had 3 per slot up in my 5-dent rattle. Here I'm just showing off, this is my little bobbin buddy. Isn't he so cute? From the amazing Aloe Frost, Kevin, over on Instagram, is an amazing ceramic artist, and I decided to use one of his pots to hold on my bobbins. So here are those colors that I was mentioning. I was trying to decide what color do I want to use first. I really didn't know. I really didn't plan this other than the treadlings. I didn't plan the colors. I didn't plan the striping. I just planned, you know, for the overall look of everything and the like larger treadling patterns. I thought about using these. Those are stitch markers. And I thought about, you know, clipping them onto the outside edge, but I ended up not using them in the end. So that was just my own thing. I just decided, like, with each pattern, I measured how long one repeat was, and then I multiplied that out to the length of the towel that I wanted. And that's how I measured my towels this time. So they're not all exactly even, but they're close enough for me. Okay, so there I'm just showing it is a 4-ply. It's kind of hard to see, but you can tell it's not, you know, 8-2 cotton. It's a much thicker 8-4 cotton. This is that coffee color. I think it's so pretty. And the whole genesis of the colors of these two before the Twill Gamp was that I wanted to see the coffee tone and the lavender mixed together. I've been obsessed for like the past 3 months with browns with purple casts and purples with brown casts. Like, I think that it's so pretty. I've seen a lot of neutral clothing brands in the last couple of years come out with these browns that have a purple shade on top, or like nude colored tans with purple on top. And I just think it's so stunning. And so I was like, I wonder if I can recreate that in weaving. So I got these 2 spools first, and I tried them out, and lo and behold, I thought it was so pretty, so I decided, let me do a whole project with it. And that's where this came from. So what I'm doing now is just tying on to the front. I go through and I tie from the middle out, and I do it twice. And then after I've done that twice, so I did it once the night before off camera, and then I did it again. And then after I do that, I go back and I tie my knots, my little bows. So you can see, once again, I did pull out my little bobbin buddy. And you can see, also, look how little waist yarn I needed. It was like 1 inch or so of waist yarn. So much less, I think, than I would normally use. And it probably took me, I don't know, 2 minutes longer than normal to tie this many sections rather than a few larger sections. I also almost forgot, as you saw, I passed through my my shuttle and I didn't have any of the yarn out for my hem stitching. So that's why I went back and I pulled that out. So we're starting out with some tabby here, and this was mostly because I wanted to get to know kind of the limits of this yarn, if that makes sense. I hadn't worked with this specific cotton. I'd only actually worked with a thicker cotton before. So this is me easing my way down. 1 8-2 cotton wasn't available when I was shopping, but 2 8-4 I thought would be like a nicer intermediary before I go to a finer cotton. And so I think it was. Here's me showing off again that those 2 colors, I think they're so pretty. That's what I was going for. And let me just mention, because if you look at my tabby there, I think it looks pretty open. I had a little bit of trouble beating as hard as I wanted to, so my picks per inch are not as dense as my ends per inch. I slayed at 15 ends per inch, and my picks per inch are probably around 12.5 once I get going into my actual twill, and maybe even less when I was doing my tabby. I did end up doing one full tabby towel at the end that I think I was beating a little bit harder, so I was able to get it in a little bit firmer. But I was surprised. I was like, this cotton is tough. It did not want to accept a firm beat. So for one of the twills, I had to double beat. If I think back, I think it was the third towel. I had to double beat to get it to tuck in as much as I wanted. Yeah, so I guess I'll just talk a little. I tried to cut out a lot of the weaving because it's stuff that you all have seen on repeat, and I wanted to show you the end product. But I thought that this was a really fun project to work on. I decided to work in 2 different threadings. So you can see here, I'm working in a straight draw for the lavender side, and then for the more neutral toned side, I'm working in a point 12, and it's just a plain point, like 1 2 3 4 3 2 1. Repeat it till the end, although I did do one section of straight draw on the point side as well, all the way over towards the left. It's like maybe 2 points in. I did one section of straight draw just for some interest. And so you can see what I'm doing here. I was just measuring like what's my draw in on this right now, because in the reed it was around 17 inches and it went down about 1.25 inches, and my tabby, it went down only about 1 1/8 inches. So I just wanted to see, like, what am I getting so far? Well, it's still under tension, because I wanted to see, like, will these even be tea towels? I was worried that I would get so much draw in or too much shrinkage. But after wet finishing, spoiler alert, they came out fine. I think that they are very nice sized tea towels. I thought I was going to end up with some serviettes or napkins instead of tea towels at the end, but I didn't. So this is just, I wanted to show like some normal speed and like what my average weaving looks like. Although I will comment, I don't know if I caught it here, but I did have some trouble at some points with my floating selvages, and I think it was because, yeah, you can see right there. It's because of the way that I slayed my reed. I think if I did this again next time, I would actually put the floating selvages in their own slot. What I was doing here and for all of my projects so far is that I just put the floating selvage in with the thread that it should go with in terms of like getting the right density. But I think I might move it actually to its own slot. I pointed out just a second ago, and I think I'll point it out again later. There are some times where I beat uneven, and I recognize that. I know that that's something I need to work on. I don't think it's anything to do with this loom. I think it's just, you know, where I place my hand and what side I favor while beating. I'm trying to get closer to the middle, but I definitely, once I get going, I just pull as close as I can to the middle, but I need to be, I think, a little bit more conscious, because you'll see there are sections like this where I've gone too far, and usually I leave it, but if I think it's a little bit too far, I'll go in like I did here with a little needle and I'll just reposition it, because I don't want the threads to have to travel too much in wet finishing. So I know, especially with the yarns that I usually work with, I don't worry too much about inconsistencies because they will work themselves out during wet finishing and drying and steaming that I normally do. But because I didn't know this yarn, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how much it's going to shrink. I don't know if it's going to, you know, stick once I start wet finishing and just try to stay in place. So that's why I tried to even that out. And here I am at the end of the first towel. So it's time to move on to the next ones. I think I only show maybe 1 or 2 more just because there were so many patterns. But I wanted to, you know, get on with the weaving and let you all see something different. Okay, here is towel number 2. This is an M&W, a tight M&W. You can just barely make out on the loom. And then on the left side, it turns into these like really cute little chains almost. You'll see off tension. I think it looks really nice. It's really hard to see on the loom, but I promise it'll look good when it's off tension. Okay, I didn't film the rest of the weaving because I decided to weave late at night, which is one of my favorite things to do. While I just like throw on a TV show or a movie. I think during these I was actually watching the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings. I think I was on 2 Towers when I started these. But I did weave a bunch of towels. So coming off in reverse order, this first one that you'll see is my bobbin clearing towel. So it really is just, you know, whatever was left on the bobbin, but I did do one section, I'll show you all later on, that was true plaid for the left-hand side, you know, where I'm squaring my sections. This was a large M&W. This was a medium M&W. This was the tight M&W. And there you can see, I also put these up at the front when I am weaving just for tension. And here was my kind of control, just plain twill. Plain 2-2 twill, I should say. So here they are. Altogether, this was about 4.5 yards, I think I warped for this. And I just wanted to do some quick looks before I go and throw in some zigzag stitches to wet finish. So off the loom, these came out to just over 15.5 inches wide. That's just off tension. Like, I mean, like this is maybe 5 minutes off the loom. So it's just starting to rebound. But I did want to do an initial look at these because I know sometimes the pattern can really change between being on the loom, off the loom, and then wet finishing. So I wanted to see all the different states. So here we are, fresh off the loom. You can start to see some of the different patterns and why I chose these 2 threadings. I think they came out really, really well. Okay. So first we have this 2-2 twill, just 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it came out pretty well. You can already see like why I chose the brown with this lavender in that 2-2 twill section. Look how pretty it's so stunning, like the overlap. And then look at just the zigzags there. The M&W. Those are going to turn into really, really pretty chains once it wet finishes and everything shrinks down. Here's the third one. Has some open diamonds on the left-hand side and what looks like waffle on the right. And then this next M&W that's much bigger makes like almost like patches of rose path on the left-hand side. I don't know how to explain it. And then here's bobbin clearing. Don't mind the mess at the back. At one point I thought I was going to leave fringe on that towel, but I actually ended up cutting it off. So no fringe on any of the towels in the end. Okay, so off camera I went down and I just did a semi-tight, I think it was like a 3 stitch length. I don't know if that means anything. I just have a Brother computerized sewing machine, but I did like a medium zigzag stitch with the goal of just holding everything in place so that I could cut down the middle and wet finish these without anything coming unraveled. because I didn't want to wet finish them as one long piece. I didn't want them to get tangled. Because these are cotton, I did my initial wet finishing in a tub with just some vinegar, salt, and cold water just to make sure I didn't have any bleeding. But then I did run these through a hot wash and a hot dry to try to get everything, you know, completely done. And that's because that's what they'll have for the rest of their life. These will be hot washed, used kitchen tea towels. So why not start washing them like that from the beginning? You can already see maybe a little bit on the right hand side top there. Some of those chains are starting to come in. The longer that this sat off the loom, the more it kind of started to rebound and start showing off the actual patterns, the reasons that I designed them this way. And just one more look before wet finishing. Look at that brown with the lavender. It's just so, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this color combination. It feels like a completely different color that I can't quite describe, and I love it. And here's all the others. There's so many, I just think I can't. I was indulging myself, okay? I was just looking at them one last time. I was like, just in case they get destroyed during wet finishing or I do something wrong, let me enjoy the fabric beforehand. Okay, it's time to go back to the Twill Gamp. So let me pull this out and I'm gonna flip it over so you can see my side right here. These were my chosen treadlings in this berry shade, whereas the green is Trompus Writ. So here you see I chose to do just that first section kind of as a gauge or as a control section. And that was the first towel. This is it wet finished and I hemmed. Don't mind my hems, they are not perfect. There you can see my zigzags. I think they came out really well. Look how well everything tightened up and that cotton really plumped up. I think it's really, really stunning. And then here's the next section that I chose. It was like that tight M&W and then the little chains. And it's a triple M, I should say, like a 3-point M rather than just like the traditional 2-point. But I did it mostly because I loved the chains. I thought it was such a unique pattern. And here, I think I have it upside down. Let me swap it around. Yes, I did. You can kind of see the M&W looks so interesting and white with the lavender. Or I guess I should say undyed with the lavender. But then look at these chains. They came out so well. I think it's such an interesting pattern. It's almost like cabling and knitting. But it's a really interesting twill that I would like to do maybe a full project just in that. And then if I flip it over, you get these kind of different kind of links on the backhand side. Thought that was a really interesting outcome. Yeah. So the rest of them, I believe, are actually not from this Gamp, but they were different M&W variations that I just decided to try. So this next towel, what was really interesting was the straight draw section in this pattern almost came out looking like waffle weave. Even though it is still a traveling back and forth, as you can see in this brown and lavender section, it was a traveling M&W, but it looks like waffle weave when it's tone on tone. And then over in this other section, we get these like lines of diamonds. It's like a diamond with a circle on top, and then between there are circles as well. I thought it was really pretty. I was surprised with how this one came out because I hadn't used these twills before. I just knew that I liked that pattern on the right. I'd done it in straight draw at one point, but I'd never done it on a point. And I was not disappointed. I think this one, after I steamed it, which I did not do for the video, after I steamed it, it became one of my favorite towels. And this one, it's really hard to see on video. This is another M&W. It might be easier to see than the other. It's a irregular M&W, so it travels to the right. It might be hard to tell just because of the colors. It travels to the right, but on the left-hand side, you get like these sections of rose path, and then they are like wrapped in zigzags. It's hard to see, but they also are wrapped, you know, vertically, not just horizontally. And then here's the last one. So this was just a cleanup towel. I didn't want to do any more twill. I just wanted to do one little project to get all of the extra yarn off of my bobbins. And I always make sure to leave room to play when I weave, and so that's what I did. Here I'm just showing this is the one section of true plaid. You can see I was trying really hard to square my sections going across as I went up. And then the rest of it was just, you know, whatever color was on the bobbin is what I used. So that's it. This was a really fun project for me. It was my first set of towels. They're all sisters, not twins, so coordinating but not necessarily matching. And that's fine with me. I think that the project was a good learning exercise. I learned a lot about these different twills. I'm very happy with how they came out. They are very functional pieces, and I think that they will have good long lives. This cotton feels so strong, but it's also so plush. I was very surprised after washing how plush these became. So that's it. It was really just a showcase. Again, I'm not a teacher, so I don't really do tutorials, but I like having a record of what I've made. I like being able to share, especially right now during the study group. It's really nice to see what everyone's making, so I thought I'd contribute what I'm making as well. All right. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all sometime soon. I'm working on some more videos. I did take 2 weeks off just to have some time away from the internet, but I do have more videos edited and ready to come out. I just have to do the voiceovers, which means I have to sit down for 30 minutes, which is not something that's easy for me. So please leave me a comment of what you're working on. I'm very interested. I like browsing the forums on School of Sweet Georgia. Highly recommend if you are not a student currently. And I will see you all sometime soon. All right, bye-bye.